It's time! It's time! You like that? You like that? Woo!
It's Waxing Lyrical, baby.
Hello, Waxers, and welcome to Waxing Lyrical with Mains and Duts. I'm your host, Mains, and my colleague in the danger zone in Rainford, Mr. Neil Dutton. How are we, Neil?
Very, very well. Very well. Glad to hear so many friends of the pod on the Around the NFL Fantasy Extravaganza.
That was a
week.
who's who of who we knew, right? It was unbelievable. Unbelievable list. It's like they'd gone down our episode list and said, let's get that guy.
Yeah. As I say, only one person on the list who, let's be honest, is never going to talk to us.
No, we share fantasy and Washington football team in common, but no, Matthew Berry is not joining us. I also liked Beverly Hills 90210 as a child. I know it's one of his favourite TV shows, but, these are details that, aren't going to get to his ears, so whatever. Neil, we arrive at the AFC North. Last two divisions left. I think this one, we may have a difference of opinion on one of the teams, a difference of opinion on one of the quarterbacks. When I say a difference of opinion, not like a difference between me and Mike Tannenbaum on said quarterback, but similar idea. And we got a bit of news. To be honest, we're not going to talk about the situations in America in relation to Jacob Blake. We support the people who are not playing basketball, baseball, doing training camp today. Can everyone just stop getting shot at multiple times? That would be nice. And
what I would say,
type of people keep on getting shot. If you don't see that as a pattern or as institutional racism of the highest order, then you probably should switch this show off, as it's not for you.
what I would say is, if you are not immediately or intimately affected by the type of events that are going on, and you feel the need to take to Twitter to air your opinion, don't. Here's what you do instead. Log off, or at least close the app down for a second, read something, or listen to something. Closed mouth, open eyes, ready ears. That's how you learn things. That's how change happens. Change is not going to happen because these Russian bots who all started supporting the NBA in the 70s, I've been a fan since the 70s, I won't watch again. Yeah, you're not real. So don't look at that and think, oh, well, I can't watch the NBA. Be selective about what advice you listen to in life in general. This is one of those prime examples. So, hands down, eyes open, mouth closed, ears ready. Listen and learn. If I can listen and learn to things, other people can.
Love it, Neil. Love it. Couldn't have said it better myself. Made you sound like a reception school teacher, but in theory, these people need to be treated as 5-year-olds. So, yes, absolutely. Let us get on with the show, Neil, and let's focus first on some news. Breaking news. Breaking being an operative word, unfortunately, as Eagles starting left tackle Andre Dillard tears his bicep and will be missing for the rest of the season. We've already done the NFC East preview. Does this have a major impact on your thoughts on the Eagles and the NFC East in general?
It's a downgrade, because as much as Andre Dillard has struggled in camp, despite Adam Schefter's words to the contrary, he was easing into the position. And obviously the Eagles were phasing away from Jason Peters. Now the re-signing of Jason Peters looks even more prescient, as the chances are he will just kick immediately straight back over to left tackle, and they'll plug in probably Matt Pryor at right guard. Peters is not the Peters we are used to. And this is also Peters who's now taken 0 snaps in camp at left tackle. So I'm not going to say he's rusty because he's played it for 15 years, but it is worth pointing out that this is not 2012 to 2016 Jason Peters. Probably when his pump. So it's a ding there. Obviously, it means they're going to have to go down to their now third choice at right guard. It's a weakening of an offensive line that had been, I think, 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, you might have thought was a strength of this team, and now it's a question mark. Obviously, the Eagles have added all this speed at wide receiver. Yeah, but if Carson Wentz can't stay upright to hit it, then we're going to go back to this dink and dunk, slow, methodical, because that's the only way Carson Wentz can, A, make a play, and B, stay safe. Obviously, Washington is a prime example within the division of a very, very strong defensive front. So that's something that it's something that needs to be looked at. And obviously the clock is ticking now. I don't think they're going to bring in any, there's no real free agents to be had. They may make a depth signing, but that'd probably just be to reinforce the guard position, which is now the third time they've done it. It is worth noticing as well that the Eagles still have not put Brandon Brooks on injured reserve. So maybe they're pinning some hopes on him being a freak, which he is, and he could be back fit and healthy at some point late in the season. So it's annoying. It's a huge blow to Dillard because, say, 2 seasons in, you'd hope if you move up in the draft to take a left tackle that they should be ready to go by now. And we're going to be going into year 3 really not knowing. So it's a concern. It's not a season-killing blow, I don't think. But it's a problem the Eagles would probably rather have not had.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where if you have a franchise quarterback, you're starting left tackle, right tackle, all of the offensive line, really, you want to keep it intact as much as possible because you don't want him to get hurt. Carson Wentz played all of last season but has had injuries in the past, which are usually impact related. He likes contact at times. So to lose Dillard is an issue. I think to lose him, as you said, if Chase Young is who Chase Young is supposed to be, it's an issue in the Washington game. It could be issues in others. I think it leads to scheme against talent, I guess. You are less talented, so you have to scheme better. Neil continually tells me that Doug Peterson is one of the most underrated coaches in the NFL, if not the most underrated. So, we'll see how it goes. It's not ideal, but, there we go. Each team in the NFL will deal with injuries. It's the ones that usually deal with them best that progress far. So we'll see how Philadelphia get on with this one. On to your second team, Neil, / the one you write for in Ravenswire, and the news this week that Earl Thomas is wild, insane, and punches fellow safeties, and then puts it on Instagram. Says he can't make a team meeting or was late for a thing because he was getting his car washed, and has been released by the by the Ravens. I guess a couple of things on this. Talent gets leeway, but it doesn't get enough if talent starts to affect the rest of the team, and that seems to be what's happened with Earl.
Yeah, I think by doing this, the Ravens have sent out a clear message that they are confident in their leadership. That when the leadership council, which always sounds like something from the Fellowship of the Ring, it sounds like something, that this is when they determined, that Frodo would take the ring to Mordor, that they would rather get by without him. Now, when the team has to weigh up, but it's going to cost us this much money to get rid of him, but the team don't want him, I think that says something about the leadership that this team shows from the players on up, and that their opinion is trusted. Earl Thomas was good last year, but he wasn't Earl Thomas. And I think the pattern that we are seeing from a later career Earl Thomas is he's a malcontent. And we've seen teams that, if Pete Fast and Loose Carroll is going to give up on you, then I think we're going to, we start to see an indication. And if the Baltimore Ravens would rather say, we'd rather pay you to not be here, but we're probably, they're probably going to do grievance and whatnot. I mean, as you say, Chuck Clark is 24 years old. He's a second or third year player. And he was angry enough to bawl at a all-pro, possible Hall of Fame player because he wasn't doing his job. And instead of trying to diffuse the situation by all accounts, Earl Thomas then swings for him. That's not what leaders do. Leaders then don't, to show what they were doing and how they're probably in the right, break social media rules by posting out a video of the play. That's a no-no. Leaders don't turn up late for meetings because they're getting their car washed. I mean, you can argue that as good as he was last year, his most notable play was when Derek Henry used him as a lead back.
As a battering ram.
Yeah. So it's just worrying, I think, that we've seen two players from the same draft class, no doubt, no question, 2010, who were both perennial Hall of Fame level talents, but are both going down the, committing career suicide in this stage of their career over the last couple of years, i.e. Earl Thomas and Antonio Brown. It's worrying, and it's not a good look. I think as well there are going to be teams that are going to be interested in Earl Thomas, but we saw that he didn't struggle. So I don't know if he struggled or whether he just couldn't be arsed learning the scheme in Baltimore. So now you have to look, well, is he going to have to go to teams that run a similar off defense to what they ran in Seattle? So the obvious one there is the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. And then there's always that Dallas noise, right? Because he's from UT.
He's from UT and did famously want to run down the tunnel after Jason Garrett saying, "Come and get me."
Yeah, $55 million contract. This is only his second year of it. $32 million was guaranteed, plus other incentives. It's what the NFL describe as basically a fully guaranteed contract. And they said, no, thank you.
Yeah.
That is an endorsement of dickheadedness of epic proportions, that they've decided they'd rather set $55 million on fire than have him in the locker room. I think it shows the stability of the Baltimore Ravens and the leadership, and we'll come on to Baltimore almost immediately after this conversation, so we'll get on to that then. I'll be honest, it says what him and Antonio Brown tell me is that we can have issues with Fast and Loose Pete and Mike Tomlin at some X's and O style decisions, but they are able to deal with humans and keep lids on lunatics much better than some other teams, because some of the names in that Seattle team, some of the names in that Pittsburgh team that both of those have been able to deal with are unbelievable. At one point in time, there was Bennett, Sherman, and Thomas in the same room on defense, and they were kept in check to some degree. Is a ringing endorsement of the man management skills, even if they should throw it more.
I think as well, there's just putting a bow on this, as it were, because we've seen now that this distractions are not acceptable, headaches are not acceptable. I will say confidently now that should put to bed the idea that the Ravens will ever sign Antonio Brown.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, well, let's stop talking about the Baltimore Ravens and let's start talking about the Baltimore Ravens as we go with the AFC North preview. Usual fare, big question, fancy sleeper, over under, and where that team is most likely to be discussed this season. First team, obviously, Baltimore Ravens. AFC title game last year. MVP last year. Big question for the Ravens is, have they done enough this off-season to challenge and get past the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, hate to nitpick, but they didn't get to the AFC title game last year.
Oh no, sorry, they got beat by Tennessee. Apologies.
Yeah. So Lamar Jackson is 0 for 2 in his career playoff start.
Apologies.
They have done an awful lot of work, tooling up this roster, but in terms of have they done enough to overtake the Kansas City Chiefs, as they have not kidnapped Patrick Mahomes? No. Now, I think, Lamar Jackson is a wonderful player, He's a completely different type of quarterback to what we've seen. I think he impressed everyone with what he brought to the table as a passer, as well as his running style. He elevated the play around him. He got quality play from the likes of Mark Ingram, who I think a lot of people might have thought might have been dust. And also he showed that, Mark Andrews is up there and deserves to be talked about as one of the best tight ends in the game. The problem is their defense has holes still. They have an excellent defensive backfield. Obviously, it's going to be missing one piece. They don't get a lot of sacks, but they do cause an awful lot of confusion with the amount of blitzing they do. I just think if it comes down to it, if it's a, saddle up, we'll meet in Texas, to borrow a phrase, I would back Patrick Mahomes to have more bullets than Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think they have got better. I think they've tried to get more talent around Lamar Jackson. I think you mentioned, we talked briefly about Antonio Brown. They've looked at other situations in which they can get even more talent around them. Lamar Jackson was the MVP and it was absolutely fantastic last season, like unbelievable. I looked into him in our Dynasty League, and boy was I happy with that situation because you got a lot of points right. Wonderful talent. Wink Martindale, fantastic defensive coordinator, done some really good work with him. But as you said, not a team that dominate the defensive line, not a team that causes a lot of sacks. I think they're the second best team in the AFC. There's a possibility you could argue they're the second best team in the NFL. But looking at it right now, and obviously things can change in body, but they're not as good as the Kansas City Chiefs. And that could just be the fact that Lamar Jackson isn't as good as Patrick Mahomes. But that doesn't mean that Lamar Jackson isn't great. He is. He just isn't as good as Patrick Mahomes, who at the moment could be seen as otherworldly. So, are the Ravens good? Yes. Are they better than last season? Possibly. Are they as good as the Chiefs? No, I don't think so.
As I say, they've made some key additions. The defense that they added Calais Campbell and Derek Wolfe, who are proven commodities, and obviously Calais Campbell might be losing a step, but he's still ridiculously productive. We should expect their young pass catchers who they drafted last year to take a step forward. Marquise Brown was probably not fully fit for the whole season. Miles Boykin, again, I think he struggled in the sense that they didn't really know how best to use him and how to translate his skill set to the NFL. He hopefully has taken that step forward. And, it's a question of, Lamar can't possibly run for that many yards again. No, he probably can't. But can he get better as a passer? Yeah, he can. Because as good a passer as he was, he left some plays on the field with his arm and got out of jail with his legs.
Yes. Well,
I'm sure, from a longevity point of view, they don't really want him running nearly 200 times. If they can scale that down to 150 and then 120, 100 in the next few years, but he continues to grow as a passer, then he's still going to be very, very good. And as long as he's there, the Ravens are going to be very, very good. It's a sad case of, yes, Tim Henman's very, very good, but that's Pete Sampras over there. Yes. And until he goes away, you don't have a chance.
Yeah, we've done this before, right? We've done the Colts and we've talked Phil Rivers to death, but Phil Rivers is Andy Murray, right? Unfortunately, at the time he was Andy Murray. Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, and Roger Federer existed. That's an issue. And if you don't take the single opportunity you get, you may not get another one. That's how this kind of situation works. I think Lamar needs to win a playoff game, though. That will be, optimal.
The record of quarterbacks who lose their first two playoff games and go on to win a Super Bowl, it's a very, very small list.
Yeah. Who's the fantasy sleeper on the Baltimore Ravens team?
Fantasy sleeper is rookie running back J.K. Dobbins. Now, we saw last year say that Mark Ingram was very good. Not a workhorse, but did score an awful lot of touchdowns. But never really, I don't think he had many games where he had 20 carries. Now, J.K. Dobbins has come in and he was ridiculously productive in college. He had 2,003 rushing yards for the Ohio State Buckeyes last year. He's shown he has a pedigree as a pass catcher. He caught at least 20 passes in his last 3 seasons with the Buckeyes. I think Mark Ingram is going to start off as the lead dog, and they will work in J.K. Dobbins, because we saw last year that Gus Edwards was still able to impact the game. He had 6 or 7 opportunities per game, even with Mark Ingram there. I think Dobbins is better than Edwards, and I think once they get him on the field and see what he's going to do, it'll be harder to limit his touches, and probably midpoint through the season, or at least towards the back end, he could start overtaking Ingram. The problem is at the moment is you're not getting him at much of a discount, because he's only going about 4. He's running back 30, while Mark Ingram's the running back 26. So I think early weeks of the season, you might be tempted to just play him as I've got no one else, he's going in as flex. And you may have a few weeks where you're thinking, why am I keeping hold of this guy? But if that's the case, trust me, hold it out. You'll benefit halfway through the season.
Baltimore Ravens over-under is 11.5. Week 3 is the game on everyone's lips. Monday Night Football. They play the Kansas City Chiefs, which is super awesome, and one that people of the UK should be staying up for. They also play at New England. Really got Monday Night Football at Cleveland. Sunday Night Football against the Steelers. They play the AFC East. The NFC East and the AFC South. So mixed bag of a schedule. Draft next week 17, Super Bowl or not at all, Neil?
I'm going to say that they're in the Super Bowl conversation because there's as good a chance as any that they'll be one of the 2 AFC combatants in the title game. If something goes wrong with Mahomes, and touch wood, let's hope it doesn't, as a neutral, as a football fan, then they should be in the Super Bowl from the AFC. But the problem is, as good as I think they are, they need to get that home field, because home field isn't so much the advantage now, it's the bye. I think that could be crucial, because then that means you're asking Kansas City to go the long way round. But if they don't get it, I just think they're going to fall. But they're not. I'm trying to be brand loyal here. They're not as good on offense as the Kansas City Chiefs, because I'd rather have Patrick Mahomes.
I know you've been name checked multiple times on the Ravens official website, so and right for Ravenswire, so I understand your concerns, right? Their division is harder than Kansas City's, in my opinion. There is this season only one bye team. Is that right? There's only the one seed gets the bye, and I don't, even if they beat Kansas City in Baltimore week 3, I still don't think they win as many games as Kansas City do. They will be discussed as a Super Bowl team. The lack of a bye will be an issue. Going to Kansas City for the AFC title game, fans or no fans, although in Kansas City there's going to be fans, it seems, although breaking news, Neil, Philadelphia have said they won't have fans all year. Pittsburgh have said they won't have any for the first 2 weeks, but at least first 2 weeks. 11.5 is a good number. I think they might win 12, but that'll be dependent on another team in this division who we'll get onto. So discussed in the Super Bowl, not in the Super Bowl. Very good team. I think a very good team and wonderfully well coached, considering about an hour and a half ago they were thinking of firing him. There we go. Next team, Neil, is the Cincinnati Bengals. Big question for the Bengals, given the draft, given where we are with them, given Zach Taylor last year. Are there signs of life in Cincinnati?
They should be boring. Because last year, they came out on fire. I mean, they gave Seattle a real scare. Week 1, John Ross running up and down the field on them. But then they lost that game, and then they kept losing. And then eventually it just seemed to be a case of, look, this offense doesn't work with the pieces we have. Let's just feed Joe Mixon and get the games over with as quickly as we can. Whereas now, they bring in Joe Burrow, who, one great season, one ordinary season. All I'm saying, that's, before we anoint him the second coming, let's just bear that in mind. Great scheme, great system, good players around him. The Bengals' offensive line is still a Greek tragedy. The Eagles obviously looking on and saying, hold my beer here. But they do have some intriguing playmakers on offense. The worry I have is that I think the defense is garbage. And I don't think they've taken enough steps to improve that. So what that means is that they're going to have to score a lot of points on offense if they're going to be competitive. I don't think this team is going to go 2-14 again, because I think they've now upgraded sufficiently on offense that they can win the odd game here and there and probably make better teams, in inverted commas, a bit wary of them. So at least they're not boring. But whether that leads to any success in a second season for Zach Taylor, I don't think so. I think they'll show improvement, but I don't see this team all suddenly turning it around and being a 9-7, 10-6 team.
I think Joe Burrow was unbelievable last season, like the best college quarterback season ever. Neil is right to highlight that the season before he wasn't very good. But to be as good as he was and be the quarterback of LSU is unreal, because LSU never had good quarterbacks. The lack of practice, the lack of pre-season is going to negatively impact him. I think there's no doubt about that. That's just a fact of life, right? I like T. Higgins. I'd still love AJ Green. This team will hope to be not discussed. I think that's what you hope to be boring, right? That's what we're kind of saying. This team spent forever being a 10. Not forever. This team spent multiple years being a 10-win team and being boring, right? No one thought anything of them, but they won 10 games and then lost the first playoff game. This team dreams of being in that position. It's not there yet, not close, but it could take tentative steps if the rookies that they drafted do well and Zach Taylor is actually a good coach.
I mean, the one thing that we know is that literally they would have to be catastrophically bad for Zach Taylor to get fired, because they're not going to pay a coach to not coach them because they're cheap.
Correct.
So they just need to show some incremental growth, some development, show that they've got more than a puncher's chance at an offense, and, hope they can do something on defense.
Fantasy sleeper for the Cincinnati Bengals, please, Neil.
Fantasy sleeper is Tyler Boyd, who's currently going as the wide receiver 31. Now, if we look over the last 3 seasons, Tyler Boyd's production is very, very close to some other notable players. Over the last 3 seasons, he's had 188 receptions, 2,298 yards and 14 touchdowns, and in total he scored 504 PPR points. In that same span, he has more receptions than Odell Beckham, he has more touchdowns than Odell Beckham, and is only 6 PPR points less. He has, he's got more receptions than T.Y. Hilton, and only 1 touchdown less, and he has more receptions and the same number of touchdowns as Brandon Cooks. Now, Tyler Boyd is obviously going to line up in the slot for the Bengals. We saw last year that Joe Burrow with LSU peppered the slot with Justin Jefferson. Now, obviously, it's a different offense, but you'd have to think that Zach Taylor, if he's taken anything from his coaching masters in the past, it's do what best suits your players. And if he thinks Joe Burrow, few nice layups in the slot, give him Tyler Boyd, I think Boyd will lead the team in targets, probably in receptions. And this allows the likes of AJ Green, T. Higgins, CJ Uzoma, even at tight end, maybe Joe Mixon get more of the passing work. It allows them, to find themselves in the offense, and Boyd can operate as Burrow's safety blanket. Over-under
for the Cincinnati Bengals is 5.5. you'll be pleased to know that most of the games are on at 6 o'clock. You'll be stunned by that amazing turn of events. I'd guess.
Flabbergasted.
It's stunning, isn't it? Is this team discussed by Draftniks in week 17 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
I think not at all. But again, I think it's going to be a Cardinals, not at all. I think people will talk about them because they'll be exciting. But when it comes to the shake-up, I don't think they're going to be there. I think 6-10 would be a good progress. But that type of, I think it's going to be the 10 will be achieved probably quicker than the 6.
It's a tough one. I think, given where we are, I think there's a possibility that they could be Draftniks. Just given the. I'm going to give you some. Week 2 at the Browns, Week 3 at Philadelphia, Week 5 at Baltimore, Week 6 at Indianapolis. It's not good, that, Bob. It's not good. They also play Tennessee, who I think we said were going to be quite good. Obviously, Dallas play the Texans. I don't know. I think 5.5 is the number. I'd probably go under, just maybe 5 and 11. Double up on them high draft picks and see where you get to. Cincinnati, it's not a bad position to be in. Don't be afraid to take it. Next team near the Cleveland Browns. The big question on the Cleveland Browns is, how do you solve a problem like being the Browns?
Well, the easy way to do it is to bring in competent people to run things and leave them alone to do it, which is not something that the Browns have made a habit of in their 21 years of re-existence. Jimmy Haslam has not left the people he has picked alone to do their jobs. He has not been clear enough in building his structure with regards who reports to who and who has final say. Now, there is a hope that is what he has done this time, and that Kevin Stefanski and Andrew Berry are singing from the same hymn sheet, which is the public thing, which is what they want to put out there for public. But also, I would hope that those two know you've got to get on, or I will. It won't be. Don't be one of you coming to me. We talked about this early in the season. Don't be coming to me with he won't do this, because if one of you goes, you both go. So I think it's a case of. I think that's the only way you can do it. It's say, no, get on or get out, both of you. So just think about that the first time you want to piss and moan about personnel decision. I don't think you can fail to be impressed by Kevin Stefanski because of his background. You can be probably be slightly wary about the scheme he wants to run because he wants to establish. Andrew Berry is a very smart person, and Berry will probably get a lot more respect because people would just say he's a Sashi Brown acolyte because he did actually play college football himself. And he's been around the likes of Sashi Brown. He's been around Howie Roseman. So he's been around smart people himself. And, it's a case of, if you want to establish the run, if that's the identity you want, commit to it. If that's what you want to do it well. And they would seem to have gone out and acquired enough pieces that will help them do it well. The likes of, they bring in Jack Conklin, you bring in Austin Hooper, you keep not competition, but you keep a complementary back in Kareem Hunt for Nick Chubb. The temptation to call them a post-hype sleeper is there, but they've let us down in the past. So some teams don't get the benefit of the doubt. And unfortunately, the Cleveland Browns are one such team. But let's be optimistic and say that I don't think this team's a Super Bowl contender that people seem to automatically assume they're going to be last year. But I think they're going to be relevant.
I think I look at this and think, every year you hype a team and you're always a year too early. And there were glaring holes on the Cleveland Browns last year that we all chose to ignore or thought they would overcome, and that mainly being the offensive line. they've attempted to do that. They've now got a coach who's actually a coach, not a clown. Loved Baker Mayfield last year. Majorly concerned this year. Year 2 is usually the year where you improve, and 2 to 3, not many players get better. He needs to big time. He had happy feet and he was scared to be in the pocket, and that can't happen again. They have talent to win games. I think that's undeniable. Do they win games? I'm not so sure. And that may just be through me just thinking, well, they're the Browns, and the Browns are just going to brown, because that's what happens. I think we all want them to be good, right? Like, give this franchise a flip and break. I don't think that's too much to ask for. Will it happen? I don't know. I'm not sure. I hope so, but if it doesn't, they believe you me, this team won't be in the not at all bracket, because stuff will go down if this team is not good. That's just a fact.
And it'd be a classic case of far too many Chiefs and not enough Indians.
Yes,
you know, which
absolutely.
I don't know if we're allowed to use phrases like that anymore. If we're not, I sincerely apologise. But yeah, there's an awful lot of ego on this team, and an awful lot of ego that hasn't really achieved a damn lot in the NFL. I mean, we always talk about the offense and how they should have been better last year. Defensively, they should be strong because they've got Myles Garrett. They've got a few more. You know, they've got other pass rushers. They've got great players in the secondary. So I think they're a good team. But I thought they were a good team last year. They just had some holes, but I banked on the talent. This year, I've been burnt. So
yes.
This year, you're going to have to show me it.
Absolutely, Neil. Absolutely. Who's the fancy sleeper on the Browns?
Well, the fancy sleeper, and this may surprise people who've listened to us for a long time, if such people exist, but it's actually Jarvis Landry. Now, Jarvis Landry has lived off volume for his entire NFL career, and there's a good chance that he's not going to get it this year because the Browns are probably not going to be as pass happy as they have been in previous years. We saw that with Kevin Stefanski with the Vikings. But again, if you look at Landry as a receiver for the Browns, he's averaged nearly 9 targets per game, just over 5 receptions, 67 yards, and 14.3 PPR points per game. In that same span, so the last 2 years, that's more PPR points than Allen Robinson. It's 1.3 fewer than Odell Beckham. And it's only 0.3 fewer than Juju Smith-Schuster. And obviously, Juju had his problems last year with the fact that he didn't have a quarterback. But I think we have seen in the past that Jarvis Landry, if he is fed, can put up low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 numbers. And at the moment, he's being drafted as a solid mid-of-the-range wide receiver 3. Now, I think this team has a slightly concentrated passing game. You've got Beckham, you've got Landry. I think Austin Hooper, is he the third option? Do we see Kareem Hunt carving out himself a role as the other pass catcher? I don't know. But at the moment, if they are going to pass, it's going to be Landry or Beckham for my money. And I just prefer Landry at his price than Beckham at his.
Over-under is 8.5. In terms of their work, first game at the Ravens is a nice one, first way up. They then do go Bengals, Washington football team, which is interesting. Only 2 games outside, or only 3 games, outside of the 6 o'clock UK window. One is 9:25 against the Colts. They play first Thursday night football against the Bengals on the NFL Network. And they play Monday Night Football against the Ravens at home. 8.5, Neil. Draft Knicks week 17 in the Super Bowl or not at all?
I think the high end of not at all. I think 8.5 is a good spot.
Yeah, me too.
I think, again, if we assume there is no massive infighting between coach and general manager, 8-8 would be seen as a good season. Mm-hmm. Could they nick 9? Possibly. If things go wrong elsewhere in this division. But to call them a contender at this stage, we've been down that road before and been burnt, so I'm not going to do it.
I think I'm almost in lockstep with you, Neil, that if things broke their way, they could win 10 games. I don't expect them to win 10 games. I see them as an 8-8 team. People may be disappointed by that, but it's the old Rome wasn't built in a day scenario for me. Like, don't run before you can walk. Let's get competent before we become, Super Bowl team. So yeah, a decent team. I guess not at all. There's no way they won't be discussed because, there's a lot of people with a lot of egos there, and some of them have got 47 commercials during every game, so, they'll be involved. Ladies and gents, it's about to get interesting. Next team, final team, and the AFC North is the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the big question for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Neil, is why do you hate Pittsburgh and I love them?
It's not that I hate them. It's just I'm not prepared to buy into this. Ben Roethlisberger's back and everything looks rosy because people are pinning so much faith on the production he had in 2018. Yes, he did put up great numbers in 2018. Yes, he passed for over 5,000 yards. Yes, great stuff. Doesn't mean he was particularly efficient when doing it. He had 100 more pass attempts than Patrick Mahomes, who also passed for 5,000 yards. Just because you do something an awful lot doesn't mean it's good. This is the quality versus quantity argument. Now, we've been conditioned to spend the last 15 years hearing Ben Roethlisberger, when asked how he is health-wise, answer, I'm okay, but. Whereas now he's come out saying, feel great. No, I don't buy it. I also don't buy the fact that they said it's Tommy John surgery. It's not Tommy John surgery. Oh, it is Tommy John surgery. Do you know? Do you not know? Or are you trying to play silly beggars? This team's offense lives and dies by what Ben Roethlisberger does. Is he going to be better than what they put out last year? Oh, God, I hope so. Because it was a hard, bloody watch. It sunk pretty much everyone. But the one bad thing, again, that does not help Ben Roethlisberger is this offensive line has dropped in quality. So we've now got a 38-year-old coming off Tommy John surgery, claiming he's in the best shape of his life behind a porous offensive line. Defense last year was incredible. You look at any number you care to name, defensively they were fantastic. They were 5th in yards allowed, 6th in points allowed, 3rd in passing yards allowed. They had 20 interceptions. 19% of their defensive plays ended with a turnover, which led the NFL. They had 54 sacks, led the NFL. They had 118 quarterback hits, led the NFL. And they had 90 tackles for loss, which was 4th in the NFL. This defense was incredible. It finally all came together. They've been hinting, teasing us that they were going to do this. We've seen that defense isn't sticky. And that, they're not going to have 20 interceptions this year. They might have a lot of sacks. They probably will. It's Pittsburgh. It's what they've always done. But I think if you're going to get to a situation that, let's just assume Ben Roethlisberger is 75% of what he has been. That's an upgrade. Yes, I know. I worry because, I have a nasty feeling that everyone is expecting a bounce back to 2018 form. And 2018 form, when you look closely, wasn't that great.
Can you just double check for me, Neil? Can you tell me who the starting quarterbacks of the Pittsburgh Steelers were last season?
They were a Mason Rudolph and something called Ducky Hodges.
A Duck Hodges. How many games did they win?
They won 8.
I know defense isn't sticky. I like that, Neil. I like what you did there. It's very on brand. It's not, but there's still probably a top 5 defense in the league this year, and they have Ben Roethlisberger. Is it Ben Roethlisberger from 2018, 2017, 2016? No, it's not. But can he actually throw it to Juju Smith-Schuster, to Deontay Johnson? Can he hand it off to James Conner? These things are all feasible, correct? This team is going to be good. This team beats Baltimore at least once. Fact bomb. Are they Super Bowl bound? No, because defense won't be as good. Ben Roethlisberger probably isn't elite anymore, and the offensive line isn't great. Can he win 10 games and be a wildcard team? Yeah, they can be, because they've got a load of talent and they've got a really good coach. So I'm okay. I'm going to take the, in this conversation, you're leaning towards this is me implying the Cleveland Browns finishing second in this division ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bad Neil.
I worry that we saw how quickly Peyton Manning dropped off. Now, what's to say? Yeah, we do.
We do this all the
But
time. We do this with Tom Brady. We do this with Phil Rivers. They're all in the same boat. I completely understand that.
yeah,
What I'm saying is, who was the
seen,
starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers last year?
Yeah, but you now have to trot those two out again, but they didn't address the backup. And as the defense is not as dominant as it was last year, because it's not sticky, they're not winning 8 games again.
No, but when Peyton Manning fell off a cliff, he was garbage, but was still a professional quarterback in leading his team to a Super Bowl, then didn't play anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? So, the situation you are suggesting, Peyton Manning didn't stop playing. He played the whole year. You're suggesting that Ben Roethlisberger gets injured. They're not the same parallel. If Ben Roethlisberger falls off a cliff as much as Peyton Manning, he's still better than Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges. So therefore, they win more games. Like, I was on the Juju Smith-Schuster hype train last year. I had him in 3 leagues. You'd be stunned to hear I didn't do very well in them leagues as my first round draft pick. Didn't catch the ball for the majority of the season because he was either injured or had Duck Hodges thrown to him. I think this team is good, and now they have a competent, if things go well and he's healthy, elite quarterback. I don't think that's, I listened to Mike Tannenbaum tell me on the telly, being paid, that Ben Roethlisberger is the 4th best quarterback in this league. One of these quarterbacks has never thrown a pass in the NFL. And the other one, who I loved the year before, ran away scared for 90% of the plays that he was involved in last season. Ben Roethlisberger played well-ish, and then got injured. And somehow, a dude who's never thrown in the NFL before, and one of the biggest disappointments in the NFL last year, are better than him. Why? How has that happened? It's not logical.
I just think an awful lot of organisational goodwill is being employed on this team because it's the Steelers.
That could be true, Neil. That could be absolutely true. Because, let's be honest, they've earned it. Because much like the New England Patriots, they seem to do a thing called win all the time. So,
win all the time?
Well, win till, January. Win between the months of September and December, as long as they're not playing someone rubbish.
Is it 3 seasons since they made the playoffs?
It is.
So,
it is. So they're in a division with Cincinnati and Cleveland. We shouldn't be throwing stones on when teams make playoffs.
I'm just thinking, if they have a Hall of Fame quarterback, they haven't been to the Super Bowl for 10 years. Haven't been to the playoffs for 3. He's coming off surgery and he's always injured.
He's always been injured. He's been injured since his first ever game.
Yeah.
The first time he's actually been injured was last year. That's his first injury. The rest of it is basically a list of ailments that you've had since I met you in 2002. How are you feeling, Neil? Oh, well, me knee, me back, me hip, whatever it is. That's Ben Roethlisberger. Do you know what I mean? Except you'd wear a helmet if you were on a bike. You know, these are the kind of things that we're saying, where you'd never ride a bike because you'd kill yourself. But you know what I'm trying to say. But I just look and think, yeah, this one, I'm just going to say, they're the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've got in my head. I think they're going to be good. And you're going to say, he's old and crap. And they're not going to be good. And we're going to find out.
I'm not going to say old and crap. I'm just going to say this is a 9-17 that's not going to make the playoffs again.
Yes. Okay.
Because Mike Tomlin doesn't do losing seasons.
He doesn't, but doesn't make the playoffs either, which is wild. Fancy sleeper, Neil?
Well, they're all fucking sleepers, apparently, according to you. Got to stop using the F word in this. I'm getting a bit too free with it. Deontay Johnson is going as the wide receiver 36. He actually led all rookie wide receivers last year, 59 receptions, 690 yards, and 5 touchdowns. Led all NFL wide receivers in target separation, 2.39 yards at time of target. This despite the fact he was given about 5 yards of cushion. So that he's getting a cushion because they're thinking you're not going to get open, we'll cut those down, and he still does. He's probably going to play outside and let Juju go back into the slots. You've got Deontay Johnson and James Washington on the outside. Pittsburgh Steelers tight ends. It's getting worse than what it is. It's going back to the days of Bruce Arians, but at least Arians used Heath Miller. Now you're banking on Vance McDonald, who flashes, never does anything. Eric Ebron, who's had one great season and has been ever since then. I just think Deontay Johnson, the only downside to him over the other two receivers is that he's never played with Roethlisberger, so he doesn't have any chemistry with him. But if he's going to be, a slightly, I'm not going to say possession-y, but if he's one who's going to operate a bit closer to the line of scrimmage than maybe James Washington is, then maybe Roethlisberger doesn't have to have the arm strength he had 6-7 years ago, because he can just get out of his hands quickly and give it to people like Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster to eat up the yak. But again, it's a question of Juju is going a place where I'm pausing to say, I think, again, this is organisational goodwill that's getting banked into him, whereas Deontay Johnson, at his price, we saw that he was productive last year with dog shit quarterbacks. Assuming Roethlisberger is an upgrade on them, then I like Deontay Johnson where he's going.
Their over-under is also 8.5. They're the first Monday Night Football game at the New York Football Giants. That's a leap from ESPN. That's a big leap. Because if you're thinking what you're thinking about them, and we both combine thinking what we think of the New York Giants, that's a terrible, terrible football game.
Yeah.
Not even, not good, ungood.
The link, of course, being that, Rooney Mara was named by her father after Dan Rooney.
Yes.
Because obviously the Rooney and the Maras are two of the 5 families, shall we say, of the NFL mafia.
I think we could say that. They're also on Monday Night Football against the Bengals in Week 15. Another possibility of truly horrific matchup.
Flexi.
They don't flex the Monday night game, do they? Can't flex Monday night.
Well, if you're not having fans, what's stopping you?
Oh, yeah, it's a good point.
Get it done.
Good point, yeah. Good point. Yeah. 8.5, Neil. Where did they discussed?
I'll discuss in Week 17, because even when they don't make the playoffs, they're still in the hunt at the end of the season. I mean, it was winning in last year, and they lost to a Ravens team playing all of their backups and didn't need to win, and still couldn't. So, defense will be good. It's not going to be as elite as it was last year, and I'm waiting to be impressed by what Ben Roethlisberger comes out.
I'm going to say Week 17 as well, but I'm going to say because I think they're a playoff team, for the first time in 4 years. They have loads of talent, and institutional goodness is usually better than the Cleveland Browns, So, they win 10 games. They beat Baltimore at least once, and they make wildcard weekend.
One massive thing that we do need to reflect on is we've not seen late career Ben Roethlisberger without Antonio Brown. So
we haven't.
Don't know what that looks like.
No, we haven't. And there's two things that could look like, I think. One is better because he isn't trying to feed a lunatic who is trying to disrupt the whole franchise and holding them to ransom and account. Or he's lost a Hall of Fame wide receiver, and old quarterbacks usually look worse when they lose Hall of Fame receivers.
It is noticeable that in his career, he's played 99 games without Antonio Brown, obviously at various points and for various reasons. Brown came in 2010, but in games that Brown played, the Steelers attempted 37 passes. In games without, they attempted 27. So maybe they do want to lean on the ground game, in which case, James Conner, Benny Snell.
Get yourself James Conner.
Yeah. But, it's a bit hard to say because obviously a lot of those 99 games were played in a less pass-happy era, should we say.
Of course. So I think me and Neil, Ravens win this division. Yeah, I think the Steelers make the playoffs. Neil does not. The Browns are beige, but that's a good thing. And the Bengals are frisky, and we hope that Joe Burrow's good. Neil, next week, final one. NFC North. Get that Aaron Rodgers love out. Brace yourselves, people. So we got coupons, Trubisky, Stafford, and Rodgers. And I reckon, Neil, and I know this for a fact, that if you were drafting one of those 4 quarterbacks in your fantasy league, you'd be picking the guy in Detroit.
Football is fun when Matt Stafford's fun.
Neil, before we get on to that next week, where can people catch you for the rest of this week?
Rest of this week on the Twitter at @ndutton13. I had a piece out today, which is Thursday, about Keenan Allen and why, people really shouldn't be sleeping on him in fantasy drafts, which, will be starting probably in, this weekend. There'll probably be an awful lot this weekend, some next week. If you are struggling with your drafts and you want some help, go to draftdayconsultants.com. You find my stuff over at Ravenswire and Rotoviz. And stay safe, open ears, closed mouth.
I totally 100% agree with Neil. I am at 97. Enjoy your week, stay safe, and these top guys are out.